for the file. So again, this homework is based on a dependent, paired, or related t-test, all being the same thing, all being, I have individuals and I'm getting 2 data points from them. Typically that's a time point, kind of a before after. So this is heart rate data. If you wanted to explore the actual data, I gave you a link for the data set and where the data was published. And then you're going to see, you'll have a live link for this, but you'll have it as a PDF. If you were wanting to open it up in Jamovi, that's the Jamovi file. And then they're showing you output for the independent t-test, but it's giving you an example of how to write it up in APA. And so we again are on chapter 7, and you have we're interested in looking at changes in heart rate with an emotional response. And so we had participants recall intensity of emotions, either happiness or anger, and their heart rate was measured in a cell phone app in beats per minute. And so the heart rate was measured before the emotional recall, so that's going to be a baseline, and then after. And the after was either during anger or during happiness, and then the order of the emotional recall was counterbalanced. So this actually is a more complex study that would actually lend itself to a NOVA output, but we are going to take a simplified version of this and just be focused on anger. And so again, this gives you some information about the data set. When you open up the Jamovi file, you'll see this. There's an ID number, first emotion, did they get anger to recall first or happiness to recall first, and then what was their heart rate before, and then the heart rate for anger. And then also they used a self-report, which was tied into their emotion, their manipulation check. So if I ask you about something angry, do you feel like you got angry? If I ask you about happiness, do you feel like you got happy? So we call that a manipulation check, and you would learn all about that in research methods. So here's the data file. And so you can see, again, we're just focused on anger. You've got your ID, you've got which did they get first, and then their emotions, and then the baseline, and then their heart rate for anger, and then the self-report for anger. And again, with when you're looking at a repeated measures design or within subject design that goes with the paired, dependent, related t-test, remember those are all names of the same thing, you are going to have 2 columns for your dependent variable measure time 1, dependent variable measure time 2. And this looks different than an independent t-test design. And so if you went back to that t-test Jamovi overview video I saw, you'd see it's a long file instead of this wide file. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go through. I'm going to show you how I got the output. But I'm also going to kind of show you the output. I wanted to remind you, depending on which order you put in, it's going to determine if you're getting a negative value for a T or a positive value for a T, so just be aware of that when you're going through. Okay, so you would go into, if you're wanting to do this yourself, I'm going to scroll this up a little more, you would go into your analyses. You would go to t-test, you would go to paired samples t-test, all right? And then the independent samples t-test is chapter 8. So we know it's a paired, it's a within subjects repeated measures design. So we go to paired, and then the box would appear. So again, I already ran this, but you'll see we're gonna do it again. So then I'm gonna put heart rate anger, and then heart rate baseline, all right? So again, I can't run a paired t-test with the self-report of anger. I only have 1 measure of self-report for intensity of emotion, and that's for anger, all right? So that's, even though that's a great data, it's not appropriate for this analyses. All right, so the other thing that I'm going to want to do, a t-test is, your t-test you run is the student's t-test. And then you're going to want mean difference. You're going to want effect size. That's our Cohen's d. You're going to want confidence intervals. You're going to want descriptives. If you wanted to, if you had specifics about your hypotheses, again, the generic, the conservative is to do a non-directional research hypothesis, and that's that one. So I'm going to keep that one on there. And then, but if you had a directional research hypothesis, you could, and we're not going to worry about that missing data. Normality goes back to distributions, having a normal distribution. With the normality, Shapiro-Wilk is the most common, and for normality, as well as when you run independent t, you'd also check the Levines for independent t, and both of those you do not want to be significant. If they are significant, that means you've got issues. So let's go ahead and take a look at our output. So I'm going to just change it up a little bit, and I'm going to change this up a little bit. Oh. There we go. So I'm going to just change this up a little bit so we can kind of see everything we're going through. There we go. Okay, so this is the T. Oops, I apologize. I'm trying to get this larger on our screen for you. I need it to cooperate for me. Go back to data. Come on, please. Okay, so here again, the Wilk-Shapiro is good. So that means I've got a nice normal distribution. Again, you can still go into analyses and descriptives and get your skewness report, your kurtosis report, and you can get your descriptives that way as well. And you can also still calculate z-scores if you were concerned you were having issues. That might be one route I'd definitely go to if I was having issues. I might then turn around and see if I've got outliers. So this is my T. This is my degrees of freedom. So my degrees of freedom is n-1 in a paired related dependent t-test. You can acknowledge that when you've got your n right here is 68. So we had 68 people participate in the study, and then our degrees of freedom is 68 minus 1, which is 67. This is my p-value. My p-value is less than 0.05. Anytime my p-value is less than 0.05, that is giving me an idea I have statistical significance. There are differences in heart rate when I'm angry versus before I was angry. This is the mean difference. This is the top of your T. Estimated standard error of your mean differences is here. So this divided by this was that. And then confidence intervals, again, always lovely to calculate. Again, quick trick. If there's no 0 in there in that distribution, that means you've got significant effects. And then my Cohen's d is 0.862. Anything bigger than 0.8 is large. So I've got a large effect here, and it's showing strong significance being less than 0.001. All right, so let's look at this. What is happening to my heart rate when I'm angry? My baseline heart rate is 64, an average for those 68 people of 64.6, and my mean average for heart rate for anger is 72.1. All right, so in your write-up, you know this is significantly different, so now you're going to talk to me more about that. My standard deviation is 12.1 and 10.3. So I'm, again, wanting you to tell me about that. Is that a moderate amount of dispersion or variance? Is that a minimal amount of dispersion or variance? Is that a lot of dispersion or variance going on there? And then estimated standard error, again, that calculation was part of that consideration for that bottom of your T when we're trying to allocate based on sample size and standard deviation, what's that kind of standard error rate, right, in that estimated standard error. All right, so this is your homework. You're going to see this as a PDF, and you also have it in the video, and I'm wanting you to do a quick write-up. I'm going to ask you a couple questions just to review some of the basics between the two types of t-tests. This will help you in your stats 230 as well, and then I'm going to ask you to do a little write-up where you are going to have to go in and write up with a sentence with APA. And again, if you go back to the course page, you'll see this output with APA. And so you're going to click on that. That's going to show you kind of how to find and set up that APA write-up. And so I'm not expecting your homework to take too long this week. Again, with this being a 1-credit class, I really do want to honor your time you spent, and I'm hoping this will be a way to build your knowledge and stats, making it stronger and more solidified. I hope you are having a good week, and please contact me if you have any questions. Thanks.